What makes the greats great? What makes the successful successful? What makes the brilliant brilliant? Our Tuesday meetups with the celebrities of pharma industry and science are your one-stop shop to all these answers and more. Join us for Pies of Life, an initiative of the Biopatrika Industry Mentorship Program, where we bring your dream mentors to you.
Yeah, so thanks, Suraja, for coming. And it's always fun to have a few people on. The fewer people there are, sometimes it actually is much more interesting conversations happen. So it's great that only the five of us are going to talk today. But as you've done this recently for the students in India, you have a general idea. So on every Tuesday or every Wednesday evening at 8 o'clock or so, I try to get someone to speak to these students. My intention is, I have really no intention. My intention is just have fun. I'm like doing nothing at 8 o'clock in the evening on Wednesdays. And if some other people want to have fun with me, great. If you learn something along the way, great. If you don't learn anything, it was a good hour spent. So that's sort of the motive. But I think in reality, the networking, the mentoring, which is always bi-directional, I think helps a lot. So I think the best thing is maybe you can tell us about yourself, and then we'll see where the questions go.
Okay. So thanks, Naren. Thanks for inviting me again to this group. The last time when I spoke to Naren's group in India, he asked me to talk about change and change in terms of career and things like that. So maybe because nowadays everybody has so many different career options that are in front of them. Things change, events change. So it's good to be prepared for change rather than say, okay, today I'm going to be this and that's what I'm going to be for the rest of my life, because I don't think that works anymore. So I started out with my undergrad and master's in human biology and pharmacology in India from the All India Institute of Medical Sciences. And then I came to the US to do my PhD at University of Illinois. And I was enjoying the work a lot. My PhD is in pharmacology, by the way. So it's nice to meet fellow pharmaceutical science people. Although microbiology, I like microbiology too. So I started doing my PhD, and towards the end of my PhD, I was working in neuroscience. So towards the end of my PhD, I started realizing that I really don't like working with animals very much, but I really love the science. And I was a firm believer in studying systems physiology, so I didn't want to go into doing, cell-based work and things like that. So towards the end of my PhD, I suddenly developed a terrible allergy to lab animals, specifically to rats. So despite that, I said, okay, I still hadn't thought about doing anything other than pharmacology. So I did a postdoc at UC San Francisco, working on pain modulation. And there, my allergies became really bad. I had to wear this big mask and all that. And I also realized more and more that I really detested working with animals. And also my supervisor was a woman who, looking back, I think she did me a favor, but at the time it really felt like she was very harsh, because she told me, women who are on the mommy track. I just had my daughter at that time. She was like 9 months old when I started my postdoc. And she said, women who are on the mommy track, they're never going to make it in academia. So, you're coming at 8 and you're leaving at 5, that's just not going to cut it. You just have to be here. So I was like, very hurt and very insulted and all of that stuff. And that, plus the fact that I hated working with animals, plus the fact that I was so allergic to rats, plus the fact that I loved the science, but I didn't believe in going into doing anything more granular than, a systems approach. I decided that I'll quit lab work and look for something else to do. And that was a very difficult decision, because I really didn't know what else existed out there for somebody with a PhD and a postdoc in studying pain modulation. So, and my husband's a physician. So both of us, our friends were all sciencey people, who never thought about doing anything other than what you were trained to do. But at the time, I thought, okay, let me get an MBA because I really didn't know what an MBA was all about either. But I thought, maybe it'll expand my horizons and I'll learn, meet different people from different walks of life and stuff. I enrolled for an MBA program at the University of Cincinnati. And it took me almost the same amount of time to get my PhD, to get my MBA as it did my PhD because I did it part time and by now I had 2 children. So it took me like almost 3.5 years to get my MBA. But after getting the MBA, I actually got a job in Eli Lilly, which is a pharmaceutical company. And it was in the division of psychiatry and working with one of their major antipsychotics at the time. Actually, it was their big drug at the time, Zyprexa or olanzapine. And I got a job there working in the publications group under the medical group. So I loved it. Like, we were looking at clinical trial design, we were looking at publishing all the results and, working with marketing, but we're still like under medical. So, you get to see the range of stuff that happens uh, in a drug that's already in the market. What are the issues that are there? How do you promote a drug? How do you develop a drug for other indications other than its primary indications? Thought leader management, all kinds of really fascinating things. And then from there, and I loved it because I liked working with people. I liked interacting with people, which was something that I missed when I was working in the lab. It was basically just me and my rat in a dark room with the oscilloscope and an electrode in its brain that measuring. It was very exciting. I'm not saying that it was not interesting, but it was not. This was different. Then from publications, I moved into regulatory affairs, which was even more interesting because now I could see the whole gamut of drug development, right from, how a molecule was invented or, discovered, and then how they would test it in animals and then bring it up in through all the different stages and then bring it into the clinic. Love that. And then in the meantime, then we moved to Philadelphia because my husband was working for got a very very good job with GlaxoSmithKline, and I joined their psychiatry division too as a neuroscience as a clinical research scientist in the psychiatry division again. And did a lot of very interesting work there. Worked on Paxil, which is an antidepressant. At the time, it was just coming about that working with antidepressants can cause an increase in suicidality. So I worked on the regulatory response for that issue with European, with the CHMP and with the EMEA and those guys. And then we started working on developing an antidepressant, so designing the clinical trials and then making that whole thing happen. And ultimately that drug failed. I mean, the clinical trial was negative. It was a successful trial, but the drug did not work as an antidepressant. So, that also was a learning because not, every drug doesn't make it to the market. And how do you design a clinical trial that is a sound trial? You have good active controls and those active controls separate from placebo, but your drug doesn't separate from placebo. So a lot of learning, even though, the studies were negative. And then from there, I worked on a couple of other things. I worked on sleep and things like that. And then because this drug that I was working on was actually the one that the company had pinned their hopes on, and when the drug failed, and everything else that they had was basically off patent. Paxil was off patent. Everything else, the company decided to get out of neuroscience. They said, okay, we are closing our psychiatry division and everybody, gets a notice period. Either you guys look for another job within the company or you leave and, you get a package. So at that time, again, my husband got a very good job in Boston working for Sanofi. And so I moved, I took the package and we moved. And when we came here, I thought I'll take a year off because my son had, was in school. We were adjusting to a new life. My husband was traveling a lot. So, but then I realized, and realized when I was here that, it's okay for me to take a year off, but I didn't have anything to do once my son went to school. I mean, so, what, there was really no point in my sitting at home doing nothing. But so I have a friend who's in Philadelphia. Actually, in Philadelphia is where I met Naren. We had a music teacher, and from that music teacher, there was a whole group of us that became very good friends. So in that group, there was one lady called Dr. Kalpana Patankar. So she is a physician who had studied Chinese medicine, like I think at that time, maybe 10, 15 years ago. And she had become a Chinese medicine practitioner. So when we moved here, she said, Suraja, why don't you think about studying Chinese medicine? I was like, what? Who the heck? I never had given it a thought about Chinese medicine. I knew nothing about it. I had never had acupuncture or anything like that before. And she said, no, 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 you'll really enjoy it, because it's like raga music. So we all love Hindustani classical music. She said, it's like raga music, like there's a framework, but then you can improvise within that. And something, something that you can carry with you for the rest of your life, and you'll help so many people, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, not really, didn't really buy into it, but I thought, okay, at least I should get an acupuncture treatment and see what that feels like. There's a very good acupuncture school here. It's actually the oldest school in the country. I went there and I got a treatment for my hot flashes. I was getting hot flashes at the time. And to my surprise, the guy who treated me, he had a very similar background. So he had a PhD in cancer biology. So this guy who did my treatment, he had a PhD in cancer biology. And he was working for AstraZeneca. So, I thought maybe, this is a sign from the universe that I should not ignore this opportunity. So I kind of joined. I went to that acupuncture school and I applied for admission and all that, and I got in. And then I thought, let me try and just try it out for a semester and see if I like it. If I don't like it, I'm going to quit. And I didn't actually really like it because it was very different. It was very the language was very poetic. The approach was very like old-fashioned kind of thing. You're talking about the whole human being in equilibrium with the environment. You're talking about the effect of heat outside, cold, and things like we don't. There's nothing genetic or anything we were talking about. Or even like when they talked about the different organ systems like the heart or the kidney or something, they didn't exactly mean what the heart is in Western medicine as we understand it, or the kidney. So it was very different. But one of the things that the school had us do was follow practitioners in the community and see how they work, because once you do something like acupuncture, after it, there's no jobs waiting for you. You have to start your own practice, or you go work for somebody else who has a practice. So there's no hospital jobs or anything. And during this time, it was also a lot of introspection for me, because this was a very different field from studying something sexy like neuroscience. Working in a wonderful pharmaceutical company where you're meeting so many different interesting people, highly educated people. You have a standing in society because you work for BSK or you work for Lilly, and you are you're a scientist and all that, and you leave all that. And one of my friend's daughters actually asked me, she said, Janti, you want to be an acupuncturist when you're a neuroscientist? What are you doing? And those were really things that really you had to think about, especially when my classmates by now, like one of them is heading up international organization, another one head of the department of biophysics in the school, another one is the head of the Watson program at IBM. People are doing like really well. And then there's me starting off again with my third master's degree. Anyway, in the meantime, there was a lot of introspection, but I was doing a lot of reading, not just about Chinese medicine, but also about, self-development, understanding things like that. So I read Eckhart Tolle, I read, I listened to Sadhguru's talk, I listened to, all these kinds of sort of philosophical questions, and sort of helped me understand things, about basically you're responsible. What can you do when you're faced with situations? The only thing you can do is control your own reaction. There's nothing else you can do. Like the world is not going to dance to your tune. So instead of you freaking out, you giving, feeling like, your life is ended, like there's nothing, you're a failure, all of these things, you think about how you want to, look at something that's in a positive light. And also along the way, I also discovered, and I mentioned this at the last group meeting with Narendra too, is that I realized that when you're a scientist, actually we are supposed to have a very open mind and accept, everything. But actually, at least to just speak for myself, I did not. My mind was not open. My mind was closed to anything that was outside of, traditional science. So this whole thing about Chinese medicine, like, it, I had a bad attitude really, if I think about it. So, but something that Sadhguru said really helped me. He said, knowledge is finite, but ignorance is infinite. You should always keep your mind open to everything, that's around you. And another thing that really helped me was, my husband, he's also a scientist in addition to being a physician. And he said, what's the first thing about science? The first thing is observation, right? And you have here 2,000-3,000 years worth of observation, clinical observation. And, how can you discount that? You can't discount it. It's really important. So that was wonderful because my PhD was based on like maybe 50 rats. And here I was questioning information from, 3,000 years. Anyway, along the way, so these were all self development things that I was working on while I was studying Chinese medicine. And along the way, I discovered, while I was working with other practitioners, that the medicine is very powerful. A lot of people, most people come to Chinese medicine after they've tried everything. Like they've gone to the doctor, they've gone to the ER, they've taken 20 different medications, had 10 different tests, and then they're still not well. So they're like, okay, let me try this, last straw kind of thing. And then people start getting better with this medicine. And it's really quite amazing to see how, some very, very sick people would come in and they feel a lot better. So that increased my confidence in the medicine. And then when I became an intern and I started practicing, I've basically, as an intern, how much do you know, right? You only studied for 2.5 years and then you start practicing, but you practice using the principles of that medicine. And then even my patients started getting better, which to me was really a matter of huge surprise. So the medicine, what I mean to say is the medicine was very powerful. So, all of these career changes that I made, every one of them came with a lot of anxiety. Every one of them involved a lot of, some kind of a risk that I took. But at the same time, I also had the safety net, of my family support, which was really important. So, I made the change, and now I'm a practitioner. I have 6 years of, I've been running my own clinic for the last 6 years and doing well. Certainly, like, there are a lot of different challenges that when you do something like this. First of all, you have to get people's buy-in. So just because I opened a clinic doesn't mean anyone's going to come. Nobody came. So you have to go and do a lot of networking, which is, for people who are scientists, it's a very difficult thing to do because we are all so cocooned in our little world. So I had to go out, put myself into all these uncomfortable situations. So like discovered there's a group called BNI, Business Network International. They meet every morning at 7 a.m., which was even another big turn-off because getting anywhere at 7 a.m. was very horrible. But anyway, I made a few meetings there. But even there, like, so you meet with people from different walks of life. There's one plumber there. There's one person who's a baker there. There's one person who's a lawyer. There's one person who's something else. So one person from every profession is represented there. And you would think like, what are these people going to do for you, or what are you going to do for them? And in the most strangest ways, the woman who had the bakery used to volunteer at the senior center in the town next to mine, and she introduced me to the senior center director, and I started running a clinic there. So you just don't know, who's going to come from where. The thing is to just keep an open mind and talk to anybody, everybody, and not for the purpose of getting something out of them or giving them something, but just having a conversation and you never know where it's going to lead, right? So a lot of different things. And then I joined an organization called the Holistic Health Alliance. So this is a organization that has people from different, supplementary alternate therapies. You meet things that I would have completely dismissed when I was a scientist. Reiki, or there's some instrument called the beamer. I even met a woman who called herself a goddess, which is, well, I bet none of you have met a goddess. I have met a goddess. For whatever it's worth, it was a very interesting thing to have sit next to somebody who tells you that she's a goddess, and you're just like, okay, that's a story I have for my life. But a lot of different interesting people I met there who, help me, who refer patients to me, who I refer people to, or I can call them and ask them. So again, the importance of networking is, I think, it cannot be understated. And again, and also, it's okay to ask people for things, and at worst they're going to say no. And it's okay to offer people some help if you can. That's also a good thing. Sometimes they'll take it, sometimes they won't. But it's and that discomfort that you feel, when you put yourself out there, I think it's natural. But I don't know how much you guys network, but early in my career, when I was where you guys are, I would not have done it. It was really nasty and uncomfortable, and it felt self-centered or weird. But I don't. The world doesn't really perceive it that way. So it's a good thing to do, I think. So yeah, so that continues now. In the meantime, I think it's also really important to have other interests, so that you're not just chasing after your career all the time. The classical music for me is like a really fascinating thing. I love it. We've been doing it forever, and it seems like forever now, but never seem to get any better at anything. But that's okay too. I mean, if you're doing it for the fun of it, for the joy of doing it. What else? Yeah. So I think that's pretty much where I am right now. I would say one of the things that I now retrospectively thinking about things, when you're young, and you're, in this life situations where you are at, it always feels like, if you don't achieve this by such and such an age, if you don't do this, if you don't do that, you're going to be the end of the world, like you're going to be a loser, or something like that. But that's really not true, because you have a long time ahead of you, and so many opportunities that will come. In this moment, something that might be, very stressful, like I'm not getting my visa, or I'm not getting the letter, or something like that. There's no question. It's very, very stressful when it's happening. But it's temporary. It will probably get fixed in the next 6 months. That you find something else that's really not what you were expecting, but that turns out to be really fun. Or you find something that you really hate, and you realize, oh, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do something. Whatever. That keeping yourself open to opportunity, I think, is really important. And not thinking that the world is going to end if this doesn't happen or that doesn't happen. The world really doesn't end. It just goes on. You might as well make a good you might as well be happy about it, and whatever you can get. That in a nutshell is my story. I don't know if if you guys have any questions, anything, I'm more than happy to talk.
Yeah, thank you. That was like something very different. And like for me, I would think of like, what if I do things like this after my PhD? And then I do think like, is it that I'm supposed to do after getting a PhD? So yeah, I think you're like the journey, the way you explain it's all roller coaster ride. And so I wanted to ask that you changed your personality in so many ways. You had to change your personality in so many ways to adapt to so many situations. So that flexibility of being adaptive, does that come with a situation because the situation was like that, or it was something inherent that you would say that you somehow had, and that's why you took those steps, or you had something in yourself that okay, I'm flexible enough to do this or do that?
That's a really good question. Wow. So all my wisdom is now, like, obviously, hindsight is 2020, right? So in the moment, it's always very difficult. There's no question about it. I don't know if I was born flexible. I have no idea. But I definitely, I think for me, the turning point in my first career change, like getting out of doing research, lab research, was really because I just couldn't stand it anymore. I really just couldn't stand it anymore. And I could not think of doing another postdoc and then another postdoc and then another postdoc and then looking for an academic job and then writing grants. And I really just could not. Like, it was a visceral thing that I didn't want to do anymore. So, I actually got into a PhD program. A postdoc after the first postdoc. Again, working on pain, but I just I'm like, no, I'm not going to do this. So then I studied for the GMAT, and because honestly, I didn't know anything else. I didn't know what I could do. And we did not have anybody, we didn't have mentors, or we didn't know anybody who did anything else. And like, now we're talking what, 25, 30 years ago, where moving from, like, leaving your PhD work, or your lab work and doing something else was really like, like, such a disaster. Your life is over, and you're just such a loser. That kind of an attitude was there. I don't know if it's still there or not, but it's definitely like some, it was, and going into industry was also like not, kind of looked down upon from the academic. And I think that attitude is still there a little bit in academia, that, industry is a little suspect and, is shady and does everything for money, which is, I think, not really true. But money is there, of course, it's the bottom line, but there's a lot of very rigorous research that happens in industry, right, Naren? It's fantastic. Yeah. So yeah, I don't think once you make a change, then I think it becomes a little bit easier to make the next change. But when you do something, especially when it's within that. So once I got into Lilly, then working for publications and medical writing and stuff, that was fun. But then switching to regulatory affairs was the change. Again, like within companies too, you sort of follow the same path that you're in. But you make the change, and you discover that you I think sometimes you pay because maybe you won't get that promotion that you could have got in the line that you were in. So, but you get to learn something very different. You get to see something very different. So there's always, I think, the trade-off. But if you decide that whatever you're going to do is going to be fun, then why should it not be, right? Unless somebody is really out there to just make your life miserable, which happens sometimes, but I don't think all the time. And then making a big change again, the Chinese medicine change, that was also a big change for me. That was like leaving behind this respectable career path, and that was also, a lot of soul searching and things like that. Yeah. But if you make it, yeah, tell me.
Yeah, and I had actually one more question. So, you mentioned few things. I have learned Reiki first level when I was back home in India. Like my mom told me to, just learn it for yourself. Don't do anything. It's just for yourself. So just learn the first level. And one of our family friends does acupressure. I know acupuncture is different. So I have, I had my ligament injury. So he being a family friend, I have got acupressure treatments for him, and I know that they work. So as you were a pure scientific researcher, and now you become a Chinese medicine practitioner. So if posed a question, what would you say? Like people do ask questions, right? If it is, this is like both are science, but still people have still a feeling that, okay, what would you go for? You will go for a paracetamol versus you will go for acupressure or acupuncture treatment. So when you had this shift, now what do you think from your experience, that what would you recommend or what would you say on that?
Again, very good question, Amrita. Really good. So, of course, this is something that, people are all the time asking about, what would you do? So, in my opinion, I think all of these medicines are equally good. I think all complement each other. Western medicine complements Chinese medicine, complements Ayurveda, complements homeopathy. I think they all exist. They should all coexist ideally in some, ideal wellness center. I think, for certain things, like if you have an infection, I would say take an antibiotic. I mean, I would not say, no, 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 you go and do acupuncture and, reduce the heat in your body. Why? When you've got something that's been tried and true and trusted, yes. If you've got back pain for which you've already gone and got Tylenol and Motrin and, muscle relaxant and physiotherapy and all that, I do acupuncture because it really helps, you know. So, and then while you're doing acupuncture, if you get physical therapy, it's wonderful because the two will work, synergistically. It's not just a 1+1 equation. So, if somebody's depressed and they're on an antidepressant and they come to me, I'm not going to say like, get off your antidepressant, let's work on your mood from the Chinese medicine lens. No, we try to help them from, with Chinese medicine. And the goal being working with their physician, see if they can get them off the antidepressant, taper it off. It's absolutely collaborative. I think each one of these medicines has their own place, and it would be stupid to deny that one is better than the other. Each one of them has their own medicines. And that's the thing that we need to open our minds to. Don't
And
a lot of
yeah.
people will come to me like this lady came who had vertigo for 8 years, and her vertigo went away. I mean, the neurologist basically told her, just lie down for a week, and then you'll be, it'll go away and you'll be fine because it's benign positional vertigo. Nobody knows what causes it. It happens. But she got better with the acupuncture, and so she went and told the neurologist, and he said, that's just some mumbo jumbo. So,
Yeah. So
okay.
yeah. If
But on the other
is
hand,
there
I
any
have another.
effort in collaboration of these different things? Because that's what, if we think is the final thing that can solve, are the people open for the such collaborative efforts?
Yes. And people are becoming more open now. I have a lady who's a physician and she's a cardiologist at Mass General Hospital. She regularly refers patients to me. She herself used to come for treatment and she really liked it. I recently had a guy who's a gastroenterologist. He came to me and he felt a lot better. So he told me, he said, give me a bunch of your cards because I'm going to refer patients to you. I have a patient who's a very good therapist. If I find somebody who's having issues, they're having marital issues or, whatever, or who's my patient, then I will refer to her. Or, so that, I have a friend who's a very good Ayurvedic practitioner. So if some long-standing somebody comes with some GI issue or something, that the diet really needs to be worked on, I will refer to that person. She refers, so it's in this area, in the Boston area, things people are actually really open. So of course, there's still, it's not like everybody's getting it, but
Yeah.
people are getting more open, and a lot of insurances are now beginning to cover this acupuncture. So Blue Cross Blue Shield does, many of them do. So it's becoming more popular. But and I always tell all my patients, I'm like, you guys please go and tell your physicians, because my doctor actually referred a couple of patients to me, which is really nice.
Wow.
Happening, and I think in India it happens much more. There's a lot of people do homeopathy.
Yeah.
A lot of people do Ayurveda. They don't have a problem melding the two. So,
Yeah. Thank you for answering those.
Oh, you're very welcome. Great questions.
Sure.
Anybody, any
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, so actually, Amrita had asked the question about the Chinese medicine and what would you prefer as, like, because initially you were a scientist and then later you changed your course and you went on to practice Chinese medicine. So I think that was similar to like my question, but I had a follow-up question. So like you said that all these types of medicine are complementary to each other, and there is like each one has its own, way of treating different ailments. So do you think there is any common thread in between traditional, allopathic medication and these other forms of medicines or alternative forms of medicine? As a scientist, like if an unbiased opinion kind of.
Yeah, I mean, all the time I'm trying to find meaning, believe me. So trying to find what, it's like if somebody comes with some pain or the other, and then I treat them using Chinese medicine principles. So, they have a headache here, but I'll put needles on their fingers and I'll put needles on their toes and I'll put needles on their legs. And it all makes sense because this channel goes there and that channel goes there, from a Chinese medicine perspective. But I'm like, from a Western biological understanding, like, what is going on? How is this working? I just can't, and I share that with my patients too, because some of them will come and say, there's one lady especially who comes, she's got shoulder pain. So if I have shoulder pain, I put needles in her leg. And she's like, Suraja, are you paying attention to me? This is what is hurting. Why are you putting needles on the leg? And then I'll tell her, no, trust me, this is where your shoulder is going to get better. Watch, and shoulder will get better. She'll ask
Oh,
me, why
wow.
did that happen? I said, because the yang Ming channels runs through the leg and the shoulder. What the hell is the yang Ming channel? I mean, just take my word for it. There are many things we don't know actually from a biomedical perspective. We don't understand how it works. Now, in terms of, there's a lot of research being done on acupuncture specifically, and how, what's why is it working the way it works? One of the things they found out is for pain modulation, it definitely works through, at least majority of it works through the opioid system. If you give naloxone, you guys know what naloxone is, right? Because you're from the pharmaceutical world. You give naloxone and you can block the anti-nociceptive effects of acupuncture. You can block the sensation of well-being that a lot of people feel really well and rested after getting acupuncture. You can block that. So a lot of it is mediated through the opioid system. Then there's a lot of studies that have been shown, like, structurally, for instance, what happens. So if you put in a needle into a certain place, and then, they've described these channels that run up and down the body. So if you put the needle in, how come if you're putting a needle in here, somewhere else it's affecting it, right? They've shown that in the fascia, there are these fibroblasts. And the fibroblast motility actually changes when you put the needles into a certain place. So that, distal to that point, proximal to that point, you can see changes in fibroblast length and things like that. How that's happening, what the cell signaling is, don't know yet. So there are a lot of things like that. A lot of neurological pathways that, little ones that we haven't mapped out. And again, this was something I mentioned in the last treatment that I saw with my own eyes. It was amazing. Again, this was a shoulder pain patient. So like I said, shoulder, is here. The needles we put are on the leg, the shoulder pain. And, people will come in, they can barely lift their arm. You put in the needles and then they'll raise their arm. It's quite magical to behold. So the other day I had a lady who came in, she had really bad shoulder pain, and this was not like, I had done this 3 or 4 times on her leg and she wasn't able to go beyond a certain point. So, okay, let me put needles into her shoulder itself, and then hook it up to an electro machine so that it stimulates the shoulder and breaks whatever the adhesions there are. So I started the electro acupuncture machine and her legs started twitching. And I said, what are you doing? And she goes, I'm not doing anything. That machine you turn on and my leg is twitching on its own. Just imagine, like, the leg is actually connected to the shoulder. But how, so how is that connection? What is that connection? We really actually still don't know. So it's these macro level anatomical things. You think anatomy, gross anatomy, we know everything there is already. We don't. There's so many things, the connectivity we don't really understand. So this, I was so excited when I saw it. I was like, wow, this is so cool. Another similar thing, like, for sometimes men who have urinary, they can't, they cannot void properly. Either because of a prostate or, enlarged prostate or something. So you put in the needles around the ankle, and you turn on again this electrical stimulation, and you'll know that you're in the right place because the big toe starts moving. and you know that it's a branch of the sacral nerve which also innervates the bladder. That's fine. But sometimes when you turn the electric machine on and you put the needles on your right leg, the left toe will start twitching. The right toe will not twitch. The left toe will twitch. And so, the body is connected in ways that we don't understand yet. And somehow these guys 3,000 years ago or whatever, 2,500 years ago, figured it out. So when I go back in time, I want to go back to that time when they discovered this and figure out what the hell, how did they figure this out, So
Yeah.
That is amazing. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is very amazing.
So, Anjana, do you
And
have
in
a
terms,
question? Yeah, go ahead. No,
no, I was
continue.
saying, so this is the acupuncture piece of it. And then, of course, there's the herbal medicine piece of it. Chinese herbs have been used for thousands of years. So the original textbook from, like 300 BC actually has like about 30 or 40 formulas for herbal medicine, herbal remedies. The big treatise on herbal remedies was written in like the 1100s or something like that. And to date, those formulas, they work, so we call them formulas because they're, they're a decoction or combinations of like several herbs. So, and they treat all kinds of, really, do a wonderful job treating all kinds of different ailments. Now, Western medicine has tried looking at a lot of these traditional medicines, so both in Ayurveda, Chinese medicine, all of these, to try and isolate an active principle to figure out, can this be made into a drug? And there have been cases, there have been definite, crossovers. For instance, in the last 10 years, there was the Nobel Prize in medicine that went to this Chinese lady for the discovery of artemisinin, which is an anti-malarial drug that came out of, so you guys are pharma people, you should know this, right?
Yep.
Anti-malarial came out of Chinese medicine. There is the first anti-hypertensive drug. You guys remember that? Came out of an Ayurvedic drug. So Rauwolfia serpentina from
Yes. Oh,
Rezapine.
yeah.
Rezapine.
Yeah, Rezapine. Yeah.
Yes. So Rezapine is a product of, herbal medicine. It came out of the Ayurvedic, pharmacopoeia. So there are a lot of medicines that are being, a lot of research that goes on. There's a ton of research and the output is not that much. So you have to try to figure out, like, why is it? Is it because maybe it's not a single drug that, single chemical that does what it does? Maybe it's the combination of drugs as they're presented, and that's causing the, that's responsible for the therapeutic action. Actually, one of the first statins also came out of, they used to use, what is that? That's from Merck, right, Narendra? Bevacol or Pravacol or whatever, one of them, from red rice vinegar, red rice yeast, something like that. So people used to take that to reduce their cholesterol until they were able to identify the active ingredient. So yeah, I think that's, the areas are now converging. There's a lot of things that we will be able to understand. Like Chinese medicine, I sometimes wish like I could figure out, I could give a dose, like, say, okay, you're really tired. Okay, I'm going to prescribe you 6 ounces of tea. Here, take this. And I wish I could have it in a tablet and give it to them. We're not there yet. Or I wish I could order labs and see how their labs are doing when I give them certain herbs. We don't have, in Massachusetts, we don't have the right to order labs. In California, they do. So, to be able to see objectively what is going on. So, yeah.
Wow. It's really fascinating how you talk with such passion about, Chinese medicine and even like the science behind it. Like, I think that's where your, your degree and your PhD and your experience in psychiatry and neuroscience, I think that's where you are able to, explain the mechanisms of how this medicine works. I think that's really, that's a very nice way that you're explaining.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank
really
you.
impressed.
No, I find it, I'm really, I'm very fascinated. I've always loved pharmacology. I think it's like the bridge between basic medicine and, and treatment. I mean, if you don't have a drug, what are you going to do? I mean, besides acupuncture, of course.
Yeah, one of
Shameless
our
plug.
pharmacology professor, like one of my pharmacology professors back in India, she is studying Ayurveda and she also tries to make sense out of this. Like she tries to connect because she is a pharmacology professor and
Mhm.
she still believes in Ayurveda. So she tries to do like, you know, have that logic of how it works.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah.
Sanjana,
WHO, yeah, I was just going to say, WHO is actually opening up a center for traditional medicine in India to start
Oh,
Oh,
studying.
that's good.
wow.
Yeah, so they just announced it this week.
That's
So I
nice.
think we'll get more
Oh,
research on it.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Okay.
Wow, that's
Maybe it's time
nice.
to go back to India and work there.
me, who knows?
Naveen did that. He went back to India and worked for
yeah, I'm
some
For a
actually,
years.
bit. Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
wow.
I live in
He
India.
was the head of R&D for Biocon.
I might just take a sabbatical and
Yeah, do
go
that,
travel.
do that.
Mami,
Suraja,
the one question.
yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead,
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Narendra.
Ask,
I was
ask.
just going to say that one of the things that I wish I'd done sooner was network earlier during my PhD, and I started right after. What are some of the tips that you have for us to network more efficiently and effectively?
Hmm. I would say, I mean, depending on what your areas of interest are, first of all, find out who are the people who are working there. Now you have LinkedIn, so it's not hard to find people. And then I think sending them emails or, whatever, a lot of people I find are pretty open to talking to you.
Mhm.
And I think if you go in without wanting something, like, you know what I mean, just going in there saying, I want to, in the back of
Give
your
me a
mind, is, I want a
job.
job, I want a job. I think
Just straight up say, give me a job.
and whatever they suggest, not just saying, okay, this is not going to work. I know this is like, mentally, you have this list of things that you think are going to work and you think are not going to work. So
Hey,
maybe not have that mental checklist and go with an open mind. Somebody gives you a suggestion, say, oh, yeah, why not? So that
hey,
would be one thing. Then if you have organizations that are, your whatever your organization is, that you're into the microbiology group or whatever the body is, you would definitely go in there and talk to people.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what else. I just getting over the discomfort of talking to people, I think, is number one.
Yeah.
Then hitting on people, like using or whatever powers of influence, people of influence, like Dr. Chirmule here,
Yeah.
or whoever,
Or Dr. Roychowdhury over here as well.
or Dr. Roychowdhury over here or wherever,
yeah,
at the worst, what is going to happen? Nothing.
They'll
Of
say,
course,
yeah.
something might come, something might happen. So,
The worst is that they just ignore your message. That's it, honestly, which is
right.
not
And
even
then
that
if they
bad.
ignore your message, it's not personal.
Yeah.
It just
hey,
is what it is. Yeah.
hey, Akshay joined. Great. Hi, Akshay. How are you?
Hi, I'm so sorry. I meant to come earlier, but I got a bit held back today.
No worries. Quickly introduce yourself and just ask any question to Suraja.
Any question?
um, my name is Akshay Ravindranath. I work in upstream development, and I'm currently working on developing vaccines for COVID vaccines in Canada.
Oh, okay.
And it starts with building the facility as well as establishing the process for manufacturing.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And did you say you work? Who did you say you're working for?
I'm actually working for the government. So this is the National Research Council of Canada, and we're trying
Nice.
to manufacture the Novavax vaccine.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. There's a guy you should all network with.
No, I just started. I can't promise anything yet. Like anywhere.
Yeah, and so Akshay, just quick background for Suraja is a friend of mine, and she does acupuncture. She talked about change. I know it's totally random, but uh, ask her some questions, or maybe you can do the rapid fire questions. So you've seen me done. Just ask her random
Are
10
you putting
questions.
me on the spot? I don't think I can do that.
No,
At first, I'm going to say, I don't know. And then the lesson that you guys have learned is don't judge me.
yeah. So I know
Let me try and ask a question. What was the first point where you were inspired to change and to take on to this kind of journey?
Yeah, we talked about that. The first change I made was when I moved from doing lab work into deciding I didn't want to be a scientist, but not knowing what I wanted to do. So I went and did an MBA. And the reason for that is really, I just hated what I was doing. I hated lab work. I hated the thought that I had to do 4 postdocs before I could get a research assistant professor job, that I didn't really want to write grants and stuff like that. So I really just, held my breath and jumped off the cliff.
Yeah.
I hoped I would land somewhere, but with a degree, like not just go out there. I firmly believe in the value of education. So, I don't mind going in. I mean, I think I'm done with getting degrees now, but if push comes to shove, I don't mind going back to school. I think at this point.
One more, yeah. Hey, normally we do this rapid fire, and I usually ask someone to do the rapid fire, but we'll try something completely different since there are not too many people. Just let's see. Okay, so all of us will ask one question to Suraja, for which the answer has to be either one word or a phrase. So it has to be quick. Okay, we'll start with Amrita.
Well, it has to be one word or a phrase.
Yeah, like what is your favorite book, for example? Like quick answers, right? Not elaborate answers. So we start with Amrita, then Sharvari, then Sanjana, then Akshay, then me, and then okay, and maybe you can ask yourself your question also, Surja, if you want. So let's start with Amrita.
What's your favorite comfort food?
Bhel puri.
Wow.
What do you like to do on a Sunday morning?
Sunday morning, nothing. Lie in bed.
Sanjana.
What's your favorite Chinese medicine procedure?
Acupuncture.
What is it?
Acupuncture.
Acupuncture. Akshay?
What's a recent hobby that you've gotten into now?
Hindustani classical music.
What book are you reading now?
I'm actually not reading anything currently.
Okay.
I've developed weird ADD with this pandemic, so I can't stick for longer than like 5 days before I have to check Facebook, WhatsApp, all those different fun things. But the last book I read was a book by my friend. It's called His Voice, and it's written by her. So this friend of mine, her name is Reema Pandey. Her father got a stroke, and for 2 years he was completely nonverbal. So she wrote a book thinking about how he must be perceiving his life. Everybody's doing things for him and things like that, which was the last book I read. It was a very well put together book, not overly sentimental, and bringing a lot of questions about end of life care from the caregiver's perspective and the person who is the patient also. Very nice book. I would recommend it.
Right. Let's quickly
And
do
then I have this
one
big Chinese medicine book that there's a journal club that's going to start on that next month. So I've signed up for that. So I figured when the journal club begins, that's when I'll start reading it.
Let's do one more round quickly. Amrita.
You were on mute, Amrita.
Yeah. What would you like to, where do you see yourself after 10? As what?
After what?
10 years from now.
After 10 years from now? Oh my God. Hopefully doing the same thing. Maybe living by the sea on a mountain.
Nice.
The same thing.
Wow. Who is your favorite singer?
Sanjeev Abhyankar.
I thought you'd say Anand Bhan. Pate, sorry.
Anand Pate. And Veena Sahasrabuddhe.
What country are you going to go to next after the pandemic?
God, I really want to go to Italy. Morocco.
Ooh. We should go to Morocco.
Yeah,
I'll tag
let's go to
along.
Let's go to Morocco.
Akshay.
It keeps on going on.
One more round, and I won't torture you more.
What's your favorite guilty pleasure?
My favorite guilty pleasure. Oh my God, how
Chocolates
many?
or-
Where should I begin? I'm going to be the fifth on that.
She's keeping a fifth on that. Okay.
Okay.
All right. My question, right? Or favorite rag, which
Oh, that's
too general. Okay, no, but you have to.
Abhogi,
Abhogi, okay.
Abhogi, Jog,
Okay. Abhogi.
Fun.
Okay. Thank you so much, Suraja. Thank you everyone for calling in. It was
My
always
pleasure.
so fun to hang out.
Thank you for taking out the time to meet us.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
All
thank you
the
so
best to you
much.
guys. Really good, very nice chatting with you all. Really good questions, and wish you all the best. And do everything that you want to do, and don't get burnt out by the time you're 30 years old or whatever. Like you all look like you're 15. So,
Bye.
Definitely.
all right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
A network should last a lifetime. Let us help you create lasting professional relationships with our world-class mentors through the Biopatrika Industry Mentorship Program. A strategic guidance program unlike no other, full of expert interviews, industry internship opportunities, CV writing, inflection point analysis, life maps, and of course, the gateway to your dream career. For a limited time only, all our services are freely available for you as we truly want you to succeed.